So what I keep thinking about, need to go get the, we probably got some information in the library in here.
On the white buffalo?
Yeah.
And it's on the web too, about the white buffalo.
The long-awaited Talking of the Trees by Cathy Mayton. You have the floor.
Introduce Maria. Everybody will know. You gonna start, Linda, or you gotta wait till you get these?
You can dip those in there. It's pretty good when you dip them.
Oh, or is that right? Well, I'll try that in a minute. Maria knows me. I'm Cathy. I live in Pattonville, so I'm an hour from here. This is Bill Jones.
I can hear you. I'm just taking notes while she ever said.
I'm a guy named Joe.
We're introducing you. I'm Bill Jones.
Yeah, to Maria, so she'll know. Everybody.
She's from Russia, so she's a different kind of Cherokee.
To Russia with love.
Right.
And you're and this is Josie. We're introducing you to Maria. We go to church at church. Well, I'm sorry, I didn't know. I'm
Sorry.
I told you this is Eddie. So this is us. What happened to
Ed?
the big guy that used to come all the time? Steve.
Steve hasn't come forever.
We don't even know.
We don't know. I tried to call the phone number I had for him, and it was not a good number.
His email is still being delivered, so I think if he's checking his email, he knows about it.
Have you heard from him, Jordan? Have you heard from him?
No, but the email that I send him does not bounce back, so he's either getting it or maybe not checking it. I don't know which.
Maybe not opening it.
He can still speak a lot of the Cherokee language. He's pretty good.
Well, he's a Cherokee priest, isn't he? I believe he's in the priesthood. At least that was my understanding.
I don't know.
Anyways, so as Dan said, Joe Dan said, I was supposed to give this presentation clear back in October, and I ended up going to Arizona because my dad was in the hospital and then he passed away, so I didn't get home till about 2 weeks ago. So the presentation is called Talking Trees, and if we look at what's happening within our culture right now in the whole world, there's just a lot of chaos. And back in the ancient times, humans interacted with all of nature and actually communicated on a daily basis. But they did it not so much with words as they did telepathically. So from thought to thought, from their thoughts to another being. And we've experienced telepathic experiences ourselves when, especially with people that have been married forever, you're thinking the same thing at the same time. So it's because the thoughts are being transferred from one to the other. And so I went to a workshop, went to a retreat in September in Colorado with hosted by Ana Maria Vasquez, and we've talked about animal communication in the past, and we know that animals can communicate to us in multiple ways, and that's just, we don't need to go through that again. But other beings can communicate with us as well, and including trees. And so I want to give a little history on my experience with trees. Back in, I think it was 2008, I was buying goat milk soap from a lady, a Navajo woman in New Mexico, and I called her to ask her about the ingredients in her soaps. And over time, we just started talking about other things. And one day she said to me, she said, you need to pay attention to what's around you. And she said, and talk and sit with the trees. She said, my trees all have names. And I thought, this is wacky. This is really wacky. I've never heard of a tree telling you its name. And so anyways, when she made that suggestion to pay attention to what was around me, and I lived at that time I was living in Winnemucca, Nevada, and I was 10 miles from, which is a small town, and I lived 10 miles from town, so I was surrounded by, in a sense, wildlife, and plus the animals that we had, the cats and the dogs, and I had my sheep then too. But what I noticed when she said that was I started seeing, and I'd seen them before, but I saw them differently. I was seeing butterflies and dragonflies and the orb weaver spiders and snakes, and when I'd go to town I'd see the hawks flying or the owls that nested, you know, on the ground and things like that. So I was seeing things more frequently than I had before, but I still thought it was weird that you could talk to trees. And what she told me was that to find one of the trees in my yard and to sit with it, sit at the base of the tree. Well, at that time, again, although I did it, it seemed weird, but in a sense, sitting with the tree is very healing for humans. Trees are very grounding, was referred to as grounding. So when we're having a really rough day and we're feeling out of sorts, one of the best things we can do is sit with a tree. You know, people used to make fun of the tree huggers. Go hug a tree, because they're actually healing human beings. So all of these things that we made fun of or didn't understand or whatever all have merit, because in the ancient times it was common knowledge. Nobody even thought about it. It was just, they communicated with the animals telepathically, they communicated with the insects and everything, and that's where the plant medicines came from, because they were getting information from the different plants. And I did bring a book on plant spirit shamanism, which talks about the different plants and the different cultures and how they you know, receive things from the plants. But so when I went to the retreat, Anna Maria had some recordings of, there's a guy that lives in Crestone, Colorado named Peter May, and he has a way to connect wires or electronics to trees, and record the sounds from the trees. The trees actually sing, and so we got to listen to that. And so one of the things Anna Maria told us after she introduced us to the tree music was for us to go sit with the tree, go find our tree. And so I ended up finding a little pine that was about this big, and it had, first I saw 3 little baby trees below it. It was a different, the babies were different than the other pine. But when I asked the tree what its name was, I got nothing. And
what a surprise.
Yeah. And so we got in a circle later on, and so we were asked, you know, what did we learn from our tree? And some people learned that, got a lot of information. There's one lady that lives in Belton, Texas, and her tree was an aging aspen tree. It was dying, and it told her that it was going to transfer the information, its knowledge, its wisdom, to trees at her home. And they were going to teach her about plant medicine. And that's very real too, because I've seen videos where trees and grasses, but trees in particular, since we're talking about trees, can communicate with one another through their root system. So if a tree is 1,000 miles away from another tree, it can still communicate because it's through the ground that they communicate. And they do this with the fungi that's on the roots of the trees, so that they do communicate with one another. So it will be very possible for that tree in Colorado to talk to her tree in Belton, Texas, and share the wisdom, his wisdom, with her tree. And they will tell you if they're male or female too. So when I moved to, so going back to my tree, the Colorado tree. So I went home with not knowing the name of my tree. And I was texting Tina, who lives in Belton, and she spent more time in Colorado than I did. And when she got home, so we were texting back and forth, and I told her I didn't get anything from my little tree. I said I don't even know the name of my little tree, but every time I dictated little tree, it capitalized it and ran the words together. And I thought, so I would correct it, separate the two words, little L, big, small L, LT. But every time I said little tree, it did the same thing. It was like, duh, that's the name of my tree, little tree. So that was kind of funny. I do have trees at home that I've lived there 7 years now, almost 8 years. We have a huge oak tree in the back of our property. It's huge, and it has, it's probably well over 100 feet tall. It has these two huge branches that come out and touch the ground. And that tree's name is Isis. And Isis was an Egyptian goddess. I'm sure you've all heard of Isis. And Isis is sometimes portrayed as a bird, or like a hawk. And that's what that tree, when I get back from that tree, and it's like its wings are just spread out like the wings of Isis. And then we have another tree that is a really unique tree. It's an elm, and it was struck by lightning at one time. And its name is Harmony. And those names came to me pretty close after we got there. And there's another little tree I planted. It's a pine tree. It's probably about a little over 10 foot tall now. And last summer, I walked from the house down to the poultry coop to feed my animals, and I smelled what seemed like jasmine. And it was just in one spot. It was in, and I thought, well, that's weird because there's no jasmine around here. I looked at the fence line. There's no jasmine blooming on the fence line. Where's that scent coming from? And so I just ignored it and went on. And then it happened several times. And so I walked over to the pine tree, and I took the needles in my hand, and it doesn't smell like jasmine to me. That's weird. And as a kid, what I would do, when we went camping, it was kind of weird then too, I guess, is I like to go up to pine trees and smell the bark. Mm-hmm. And to me, they smelled like chocolate. But I loved to do that as a kid. But I wasn't getting that scent from this pine tree. But several times when I would walk through there, I would get this scent of jasmine. But see, what happened is it used the scent to draw me over to the tree. So then I thought, okay, I'm going to ask the name of this tree. And so I asked, and sometimes I don't get names right away. It happens with my animals too. Sometimes it comes right away, and sometimes it doesn't. But anyways, it's right adjacent to a pen where I have my rams, and I went in there because they had been eating on the pine tree, and so I was over there beside the pine tree, and I asked it again, what's your name? And all of a sudden, a little light breeze came up. And I said, okay, is your name Breezy? No, his name is Breeze. Yeah. So I thought, well, that's pretty cool. And it was a cool way that it showed me, what its name was. We have another tree right outside our house. We have 4 of them. They're bald cypress. And one in particular has grown. It doesn't grow like the others. Its shape is not like the others. It has difficulty in the summertime. It's just not like the other trees at all. So I've been asking what its name was, and it took me literally over a year to get the name. And its name is Bashful. I guess that's why it took so long to get it. But I wanted to read to you in this book. When I was in Arizona, I read this book called, I believe it's called The Path of the Black Panther. And I want to show you the sacredness that we've lost with all of the beings that we live with. So this is actually coming from the eagle, this information. All creatures of nature have a sacred gift. Each one carries one of the sacred powers of the all. The eagle has the gift of being able to see far away. The owl has the gift of seeing in the dark and in all directions. The hawk has the gift of being brave. What about us? Are we a mistake of nature, or do we also carry a sacred gift? One time, after praying in a ceremony, the eagle spirit kindly responded to us, wanting to help us remember who we are so we may live accordingly. He told us a story of where we come from. This story, which refers to our first grandfathers, connects us to a time so remote that when talking about it, we feel the flavor of a myth, and at the same time has so much to do with what is happening to humanity right now. The best direction for us to take becomes clear when we remember who we are. I believe this is why Grandfather Eagle gave us this gift. This is what I remembered that he said. In the beginning, there is only a point of light. The point of light fused its feminine and masculine energies and exploded, generating 7 stars. All at once, these 7 stars also fused their masculine and feminine energies and exploded, generating the 13 creators of this world, who manifested the existence of all beings through their singing and dancing. The 13th, conducting the dance, was the one who maintained his duality intact within himself, Eagle Dancer. To his left were 6 female dancers, and to his right, 6 male dancers. They formed a circle standing on top of the open space of nothingness, each one of them carrying a staff, which they banged on the floor of nothingness, calling it to become something. The first thing to appear before them was a tree that was an animal. While the dancers of creation continued with their movements and songs, fruits began to appear in the branches of the tree, which are now all the animal species and all of the plants that reside on earth. One by one, they detached from the tree and found their place on the terrestrial space that the dancers had called to solidify itself from nothingness. In this way, the world and its inhabitants were created. At the end, the dancers who sang the creation of the world decided to leave a species on earth that had qualities similar to those of themselves. They created woman and men and left them with a mission to care for the rest of creation through the power of their heart and their capacity to produce refined vibrations. The first humans were born to be guardians of the memory for the original design of life, guardians of the memory that resides in the song and dance of creation. Keeping this memory alive in their heart and singing it back to all their lives became their gift, their mission, and the foundation of a beautiful way of life. And so for a long time, humans lived coherently, cohabitating, co-creating with all of the beings with no problems. But then, when they were at the peak of their power, darkness showed up in the souls of many, and for the first time, humans knew emotions like jealousy, envy, and greed. Those trying to prove to be the most powerful and beautiful among the rest competed with each other, and in doing so ended up wounded. A strange kind of pain related to the loss of unity with others, which came together with the loss of oneself, gave birth to fear. It's one of the most things that cripples us is fear. And we live in a world that is today is just so full of fear. It's on TV, it's in the news. We're constantly being bombarded with fear. Defensiveness and aggressive behavior born from fear made them close their hearts, which has happened. When we are open-hearted, we don't do harm to others. But humanity closed its heart. Disconnected from the radiant light of their spirits, they kept going further and further from their original selves. With time, they forgot their origin and the way Eagle Dancer encouraged them to sing in the beginning, becoming one. Those who had grown a hole in their souls had a craving for becoming the one, ignoring that the one is really the one heart that is born from cooperating with others. The original brotherhood of the humans got lost. Some nations developed strong ethnic identities that were used for stating that they were not like the rest, forbidding their young ones to marry with an outsider. When the humans became divided, the rest of creation lost the contribution of its caretaker. Their violence made them hurt not only each other, but the earth as well. The balance of life became debilitated to the extent that the tree of life became ill and began to die. Its withered branches fell upon the earth, generating earthquakes, volcanic explosions, and flooding. This violent way of life continued until one day some of them decided to climb to the top of the mountain to cry for help. They were the ones listening to the beating of their own frightened hearts, remembered the staffs of the dancers of the beginning, banging and banging, calling life. On the mountain, their vision was healed and they remembered themselves, being able to feel their hearts again. When they came down, they knew what to do. The dance and songs of the beginnings were once again offered to the tree of life, which now was a dying tree. Fallen branches were good for making drums that made the heartbeat of the tree of life resonate throughout the earth. The branches were also good for lighting the sacred fire that showed them the spirit of the tree. In front of this tree, they danced to the rhythm of the drum day and night, elevating their vibration higher and higher, in alignment with the beginning and the origin of all things. Remembering and healing themselves, they were able to reestablish the health and equilibrium of life on earth. And this is where what's happening right now, if you think about it, I don't know if you've been paying attention to what's happening on the Lakotas, in Pine Ridge, it's Sacred Stone. It's the Native Americans, again, who are calling people to awareness. Now we're being called to be aware of water. Water is life. And so it's the sacredness of the Native Americans who have awakened the whole world by saying, hey, no, we don't want this black snake coming across our land, any land, and going under the Missouri River. So people need to we've lost our connection with nature. We've become so enamored and so connected to our phones. You can't even go to the bathroom without their phone, you know. You can't, you go to dinner and they're
Don't even get me started on that.
you know, so we've become so connected to the electronics. They could be walking down the street texting, and a butterfly could go past them, or a tree could brush their skin, and they wouldn't even know it. So this is what the message is that nature is trying to provide. The animals are trying to communicate with us. They're wanting to communicate with us. The trees are wanting to communicate with us. The waters are trying to communicate to us. And all of the insects and things like that. So the message that we need to share with others is to open our hearts, because when our hearts are open, we're not going to create pain and suffering on another individual, whether it's an ant or a bird or whatever, you know. What's happened is man became dominion over everything. And so there's no respect for what keeps us alive. And it's all about the money, you know, the greed, how much the ore and stuff that we pull out of Mother Earth and things like that. So one of the things I would like you to do is to go home and find a tree that you connect to, that you feel drawn to, and just spend some time with that tree and ask it, will you tell me your name? And usually the first name that pops into your head is the name of the tree. And it may
wait till spring.
Pardon me?
Can we wait till spring?
Oh, it's not that bad. Tomorrow's going to be warm.
The bark is chattering out there right now.
Huh?
The bark is chattering.
The bark is chattering. The trees are going to sleep.
My special tree probably would say, Linda, would you get these lights off of my trunk?
Actually not.
He may like it.
Yeah, and there's actually elementals. People don't realize it, but there's other little beings that live among our plants, and they like things like that. So if you did it with, you can ask your tree, you know, do you like these lights? And most likely they are going to like it. I mean, if you put the lights on and you're grumpy when you're putting the lights on and stuff, then the tree may not be so happy. But if you did it in a festive way and you were wanting to make the tree more pretty,
It started out in a very festive way, and I was happy, and but then I couldn't get the connectors to connect, and then I had to go back in the house and calm myself down. So that tree was thinking, but this tree,
what kind of tree is it?
what is that tree?
I don't know which one.
One back here. Oh, my uncle got, when my son was 10, I think it was his 10th birthday, he decided he would get him a tree, and they planted it together. And so that's a special tree, and it's huge now.
That's a red oak.
A red oak. Yeah. So over the next month, by the time we come back next month, I would encourage you to connect with the tree, just to see for fun what you get. And then once you connect with that tree, I mean, you can still communicate with that tree from your nice cozy chair with your hot cup of tea.
Hot chocolate.
There you go.
Oh, the tree music. Has anyone ever tried to record that?
Peter Mays does.
So how do we get copies of the music?
I'll ask Anna Maria about it because apparently she knows Peter, so I don't know, he may have a website even.
What's his last name?
Peter Mays, M-A-Y-S, I think.
Y'all got to listen to it when you did that thing in Colorado, didn't you? Or no?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it wasn't, honestly, it didn't sound like much. But I think if you spent more time with Peter, or if you got one of his recordings, you'd probably be able to appreciate it a little more. The other thing that he does is he makes essences from the trees that you can put on your skin, you know, to connect more to the trees. And that's the thing too, is that there's so much healing that these plants can provide, either in medicines or like the essential oils or flower essences. So there's different ways that people have learned over time to work with the plants and making sure that they pick, you know, at the right time in order to make the medicine and things like that. But, so
There are at least two very special trees on this property. One is right outside this door, was planted in memory of Emmeline Hallman. It's got a stone indicating that, and it's been there for at least 5 years, I think, maybe longer. In front of the sanctuary, there's a large holly tree that's, I don't know, 20, 30 feet, way taller than the church. And it was planted by Uncle Ed Tenney, who was the son of the Ambrose Tenney, who gave the land for the church. And he planted that himself while he was still going to this church. I just wonder if you could connect with individual trees. Do you think in cases like that, where there's some special reason for the tree being there, you know, in memory of somebody or because a certain individual planted the tree, would there be maybe a special connection just because of that?
most definitely, I planted. It was planted while I was gone, but I bought a lavender-colored crepe myrtle to plant in honor of my grandmother. So, you know, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to get a little plaque to put at the base of the tree. So, and the tree's going to know it, you know, and plus, I'm talking to the tree and being grateful. Come spring, I'm going to, next year when maybe it'll bloom. It's just a baby, but eventually it's going to bloom, and each year will remind me of my grandmother. So are there any other?
What about the fruit? Like in front of the sanctuary, very ancient trees are still there, you know, that were there when Ambrose gave the land. Hickory nut trees that each year drop hickory nuts, a pecan tree, at least one. You know, is there any, if you connect with a tree, can you connect even in a special way because you are in some way making use of the fruit?
Yeah, anytime you pick fruit, you always want to thank the tree, and because they're giving us life, and so we always want to be respectful to the tree and tell it thank you, and then do things you can do things to honor the tree. You can, you know, give it, if you want to give it a pinch of tobacco. The Native Americans use tobacco, or they'll use cornmeal, and so you can always thank the tree. If you find a feather, you could place a feather in the tree. I have a little Norfolk Island pine that I bought at Christmas time, and it's in the house, and I decorate that tree with feathers that have been gifted to me. There was one when I was at the retreat. I'd never seen a feather that color before, but it's orange, and it's, I'm trying to remember the bird. A northern flicker is what the bird was. And not only did I find a feather, but I also got to see a flicker, so which was new to me because I'd never seen a flicker before.
What if you have a tree that is in severe distress, but the arborists who look at it say there's nothing that can be done? Is there any way to try to heal a tree that is sick, truly sick, and looks like it might be about to die?
You can always pray for a tree. You can send, we all have healing powers. And so you can actually send healing energy to that tree. But we also have to realize that there's a circle of life. So if you've established a rapport with the tree, then you can ask it, you know, what do you need? Do you need fertilizer? Do you just need love? Do you, you know, what is it that you need? Or are you dying and you just need my support? So you just ask the tree, you know, what it needs, and offer whatever it's asking for. But like the aspen tree that Tina found, her tree was dying, so we also have to be reminded of the circle of life.
There's a tree in my mother's yard that we looked at it, and it's old. We don't know how old this tree is. And we looked at it and said, oh, it's definitely dying. So my niece that's taking care of, anyway, she got somebody to come out and look at it. And because part of its huge limbs was brushing the roof of my mother's house. And so this guy came out and he said, oh no, it's not dying. Lightning has struck it. Oh, see? Up there. And then, you know, when he pointed it out, we could see where it. So he trimmed all of those limbs that was close there. And then he cleaned out the decayed part of the tree. And he said it only goes this deep. And then he painted it.
So it
looks great.
And anytime you trim a tree, you just want to let it know that you're going to be doing that, and why you're doing it, and you know, always showing respect for the tree, or your roses, or whatever you're trimming. Any more questions?
I'll just make one comment, not exactly a question. When we first moved back here, built a house over there on the little farm that we're on. The farm was and is about a third open, cultivated meadow, cultivatable, but currently used as a meadow, open, and 2/3 of it is timber, you know, trees. And there was this area going down to the foothills of the trees that I discovered that I could take a turn and go down just a short distance into it, and I was in a little open area in the trees, in which I was totally surrounded by trees, and the canopies covered the top. You know, couldn't see the sky. And that became what I actually called my sacred space. And I wasn't thinking so much of the trees as the fact of the isolation, the solitude that it gave me. And I still go down there, not as much as I used to, you know, but it is a very special place.
That's really neat. One of the things we can do to help trees and nature as a whole is, if you look in a lot of our products now, they have palm oil in it. What's happening in the rainforest is it's being deforested to plant these palm trees to be used for palm oil. And it's destroying the rainforest, and it's also destroying the homes where orangutans and things like the other animals live. So people don't realize that we vote with our fork. Everything that we pull off that shelf is saying, okay, I'm okay with that. So if you read on the label, and this is what I do, if I read on the label it's got palm oil, I put it back. And I find another product that doesn't have palm oil in it in order to say I'm not going to support that. And so there's different ways that we can support nature and the trees and the animals by animals that are raised inhumanely. You know, you don't eat the beef, or you don't eat the chicken or whatever from a particular company because they're not taking care of the animals properly. So we can help nature, and we can stand for nature by everyday choices that we make. And planting a tree is, trees is what generates the rain. That's where our rain comes from, is from the Amazon and the oxygen. So when you deforest it, I mean, that's not only harming the environment and the animals, but it's also harming to humans as well. So, anyways, go ahead.
We know more about Indian philosophy, Chinese philosophy. Why we don't know much about Native American Indian philosophy? Was it kept secret, or just white people rejected it? Culture gets it.
What happened was when the conquistadors and things, and the people came from England to here, they basically saw the Native Americans as savages because they felt they were worshiping false gods and things like that, and so they used them as slaves. They eventually, like the Lakotas and the Cherokees and other, they tore them from their lands. And if the white man needed the land, the white man took it, and they kept pushing the Indians further and further away from their lands. And in fact, the Sundance that the Lakotas did, that went underground because when the soldiers put them on the reservations and stuff, they took away their language, they took away their culture, they took away their entire way of life. They took away their religion. And so a lot of the things that the religious techniques went underground. And it wasn't until not all that long ago that the Sundance was reinstated. I have a book called Sacred Fireplace that is written by the 38th, he's the 37th generation of the Spotted Eagle Way. And the Spotted Eagle Way has to do with the Sundance. It's a really cool book. And his son will be the 38th shaman, or native medicine man. So it's like other cultures, they enslaved them, they tore them from their homes and totally destroyed them as a people, and they're continuing to do it to this very day. The Lakotas are not being seen. We're hearing a lot about the Lakotas, and it always seems to me that they have to fight their battles in the dead of winter. Here they are again in blizzards out there trying to protect not only their land, but they're trying to protect water as a whole for humanity. So we have to give a lot of credit to the Native Americans and do what we can to support them.
How people can support that? I know that I read that several tribes actually come to visit.
People have come from all over the world to Sacred Stone to help. They need money, they need supplies. There's websites. I have websites.
If you can share.
I can do that. But they need monies not only to buy supplies, but they also need monies for legal fees. And then a lot of people have, in fact, one of the ladies that was at the retreat, she and her husband and her sons, they live in Colorado, but they gathered up a lot of supplies and things, and they were going to take it and to them. So I haven't heard whether.
I didn't realize that that's been going on for a while.
Yeah, they say 2 years.
Oh. See, it's just come to light in the last few months.
Right. It's really come to light. I didn't hear about it till a few months ago either.
It seems to me that you had another topic that you said at another time in the future you'd like to give. Am I remembering right? And if so, what was it?
On the medicine wheel.
Yeah. When do you want to do that?
Give me a couple months.
So maybe in February?
Really interesting.
Yeah, maybe February.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll plan on it.
Okay, we'll put you down.
Okay.
Now, did somebody? Oh, yeah, it was Nancy Whistler was going to do a program for January.
Yes.
So we're set for January and February.
I'm going to touch base with her.
Has anyone else got any programs in mind you'd like to do at sometime after February?
Or you can do it before.
Hmm?
If you want to take February, I'll do February.
You could negotiate for February.
Oh, I can't think of anything right now, but, we as a group have got to come up with some programs, so let's all be thinking about it. What we can do. I don't have one right now. Do you have one?
No, not.
That I can do for you?
I will consider.
Yeah, well, everybody just be thinking about it. Maybe during the next 2 programs, somebody will come up with another one for March.
I can say that, like the programs we just had, if we pay attention to what's around us, maybe just a tree or something, you find out later. Like I had one thing that, or 2 or 3 things, I guess, at least about nature, that I had, the Cherokee used to teach. One of the sacred things is the tree is like cypress, but everybody smokes. You got the Christmas tree. What's that? Cedar. And that's part of the smoking with the fire. Anyhow, one of the stories that they told was the Cherokee that was, I'm not going to tell all this, but it was a lot of story. But you had the grandfather and grandmother with a cedar. And you can tell a cedar whether it's a male or a female. And so I always, we have a tree close by the road coming out, and there's a cedar tree there, and it's a female. And I'll always refer to my grandmother.
Oh, cool.
Every time that I see that tree, and then the back of it, so that a lot of cedars back there, and I call they go out in the pasture and see about the animals. I'd say one of those grandfathers.
Yeah, and see, the thing is when you go outside, you can just talk to nature as a whole and say good morning to the trees, good morning to the grasses, even though the grasses and the trees are sleeping now. But they can still be greeted, and it's amazing how I just spoke to it's actually a beekeeper, but he started talking about cedar trees. I love cedar trees. I like how they look. I love the smell of cedar, but a lot of people around here hate cedar. And he was telling me how they had this, when, I think it was when 2,4-D, I think he named off the chemical. I don't remember if it was 2,4-D or not, but there was something that, some instrument that you could load with that poison and just stab the tree. And he went around and killed all of the cedar trees. And I thought, how sad is that? You know? But that's what humans do. If it doesn't meet their needs, or they don't like it, or it doesn't look right, or whatever, they destroy it. You know, and everything has a purpose.
Yeah, there's a term, and even Neil Sperry, you know, the great gardening expert, he uses it. Trash trees. He says, don't ever get a Bradford pear. It's a trash tree. You know, and if you got one, get rid of it.
Really?
Yeah.
I have a Bradford
But
pear.
that's just an example of the term, and it's used for a number of fast-growing trees. You know, fruitless mulberry, things like that. Trash trees.
I don't know if you've ever heard of this or not, and I think it was kind of strange when our daughter was telling me that they live over in Lake Cypress Springs, and they have a bunch of pines, and some of them are leaning toward their house, and they're going to have to take them down. So they heard this man was swearing on his name, and he's going to come and take down the ones that are written in their house, and just to be able to have wood. But he said, certainly, there's one tree out there that's the grandfather tree,
You said that?
and it looks out after the other trees.
That's true.
And she told me how to recognize it. It's got the big strong branches up high. And he told her not to let anybody take that one down. Of course, it's a ways from the house. If it decided to fall, because you know they have lateral roots, not very deep lateral.
Yeah.
Not to let anybody take that one down, because if they do, it will destroy all the other ones. That grandfather tree looks after those. Have you ever heard anything
Yes.
like this?
Yes. Yes.
I thought it was the strangest thing I had ever heard. And I started to laugh, and my daughter called up my arm and pinched me.
No, that's true. There are trees that look over that look over the other trees, the baby trees and the trees surrounding them. In fact, Anna Maria had one. She had multiple trees in groups, and they can't remember exactly. I have to see if I can get her to tell me. But there's one. If trees are in a circle, they're one thing, and if trees are in a different position, their branches mean something. And she has one that's called Diana. It's interesting when I get names, it all has to do with. I rarely get a human name, and a lot of people get human names for their dogs or their trees or whatever. I don't. It's pretty rare that I do get a human name. I do have a ewe named Molly, so that's a human name. But most of them, and a Rosie, she's named after a friend, and Lila's named after an animal communicator. But typically, most of my animals don't have human names. And I've had some really unique names come up because well, it's like when I was on my trip back, I found a stray cat, And I took her in the motel room with me that night, and I fed her, ordered a hamburger for her and fed her. And so I asked her what her name was, and the first word that came into my head was Bella. Well, when a name comes in like that, that's not something I would think of. But I still questioned it because I wasn't really sure. But that's what her name was Bella. She didn't come home with me. She didn't want to come home with me. So, but anyways,
We
I
got a
have
dog named Stinky.
Stinky. But yeah, what he said, what your arborist said is true. There are, like you said, grandmother and grandfather trees, and they do look over the other trees. And those trees, like I said, can talk to other trees for thousands of miles away. So
It's amazing. One time Ronnie went back when he was carrying mail. He was going down the street
That's good.
and he just happened to look up, and notice things. And he said it looked like that tree, the leaves were dancing. And he said, I just stood and just watched it for a little bit because it just was so. He said, I never noticed anything like that before.
but that's cool, that's magical. I
I
watched,
saw all the kids at school, and what I said, everything was going on, the world was going on, they didn't pay attention to anything
Right.
else. But I watched that tree and believed, I'll tell you what the tree was, but I can't. And they were dancing and moving. The whole thing was just
wow.
telling me, and I could just, I had to feel this, you could know that something was going on there.
Yeah. I watched a program a couple months ago on it was a documentary, and it was about plant communication, tree communication, and I don't remember the name of the country. I think it was in Africa or something, but there was these acacia trees, and there was a drought, and which is typical in Africa. But these antelope were eating on the acacias, and then the antelope started dropping like flies. They were just dying, just hundreds of them were dying, and they couldn't figure out why. And what they figured out finally was that the acacias were putting out, they have cyanide in them, but they were putting out more cyanide, and they were communicating to all of the other acacia trees, and that's what was killing the antelope. They weren't able to process their foods, and so they were dying. They just dropped like flies. So when a tree is being stressed, or they can communicate to from insects or animals that are feeding on them. They can communicate with one another, and I guess even kill them. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But there are documentaries on TV about plant communication, how, through the roots and in other ways, through pheromones and things like that, where they can communicate with each other. And now you can communicate with them as well.
Some people talk to their plants to try to get them to grow.
And that's true. And what in fact, if there's he's passed away now, but there was a Japanese researcher. His name's Dr. Emoto. I never can pronounce his first name correctly, but Emoto's his last name. He wrote a couple books. He wrote multiple books, but one's called Messages from Water. Did you hear? Okay. So water has memory, and water can be communicated to, and so he did experiments by taking water from different places, and he created a method to